Welcome to episode 2 of the Rest Period podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Riddle, and I'm here with my co-host, Matt Mittman.
Yeah, welcome back. I want to say a quick shout out. Thank you to everybody out there listening. I got a lot of awesome feedback on episode 1, and we're really excited to keep the show going on. Excited for episode 2 here today and to kind of see where this podcast takes us.
Yeah, and we got a little bit of a new setup this time, so hopefully the audio and the video is a lot better than the first time, but we're trying to take your guys' feedback and apply it to the episode. So, but we got a good one going for you guys today. We got our first guest, Nick Merkel. He's going to talk about his time in the Marines and his deployment, and then we got Matt over here who's going to talk about his patent and then some MVP robotic stuff. So I think we got a pretty interesting episode for you guys.
Yeah, excited to get after it. Nick, welcome. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited for this. Be the first guest on you guys' podcast too. It's exciting.
And with that, let's pop the Rogans. Rogan time.
Good time to mention we're missing our fearless leader today, Kyle Lombardi. What's Kyle up to? I'm not actually sure.
I don't know. I think he just said that he doesn't want to be part of the podcast anymore. He's too busy doing burpees, I heard.
Yeah, he was saying today he said 1,200 burpees, then pick the kids up from the pool, then 1,200 more burpees, I think was his plans tonight. So.
All right, cheers, guys.
Dangerous.
All right, Matt. Why don't you just,
You like it? Spicy pineapple?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, Matt. Why don't you just, start us off here?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, like I said, Nick, thanks for coming. And obviously, thank you for your service. For those of you that don't know Nick was, I'll let him introduce himself, but Nick, a former Marine. Take it away.
So we'll kind of go into the background of what I did and my everything like that, and we'll start off pretty early. So I went to high school locally up in Grafton there. I graduated a semester early, so it's not, I'm not a genius or anything, but just a semester early to join the Marine Corps, to line it up with a few dates. I went to boot camp. For people that don't know, it's just a 13-week long training session. And the funny thing about boot camp is I thought, like, with my stature, I wasn't like a big guy or anything. I thought I was going to be one of the smaller ones going into boot camp. Not the story at all. It was kind of a shock to see the field of Marines that come to boot camp, but it wasn't all these like big jocks that just lift weights all day and do, take 10 scoops of protein with every workout. It was kind of a lot of more normal guys, and that's because they got a lot of different jobs to fill. They got clerical jobs, supply, S1, S2, which is kind of like your admin, payroll kind of stuff like that.
So you were like 18 when you went to boot camp? How old were you when you went to boot camp?
Yep, I was 18. So I turned 18 in September. I left for boot camp in March 6th in 2017. So I went to boot camp. After boot camp, you go to a infantry training that's a month long out in California in Camp Pendleton, and they divide it up. So just to kind of get a better breakdown, they classify Marines as two different things. You're either a grunt or you're a pogue. A grunt is a guy in infantry. A pogue is stands for person other than grunt, which just means you're not infantry. But those are two big classifications. If you ask anybody in the military, they'll specify what they are. So I went to the pogue school, the non-infantry school, which is this Marine combat training. You learn some assault tactics and stuff like that, but it doesn't go too in depth because that's not your actual MOS or job. After that, you go to your specialty school. For me, I was a 2111, a small arms repair technician. So I worked on anything from an M9 pistol to a 50 cal machine gun to mortars, grenade launchers, anything like that. I went to Virginia was supposed to be like 10 weeks of schooling. Turned out to be like 3 months because there was such a backlog of students. They couldn't really handle everybody. But then after that, I got my first duty station. I was with 1st Maintenance Battalion out in California, which is fantastic. I loved living out there, loved the culture, but it's a little too pricey, so that's why I moved back to Wisconsin.
The San Diego real estate number or values, right?
Yeah, it's not great. So that was like my entrance into the Marine Corps. Then I stuck with Camp Pendleton for about 2 years, and I got put on a special MAGTF. So it's a special purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force. It's basically just a jumbled group of people from all different units that tag on to a different unit and deploy. Our main FOB was in Kuwait. That's where most of the things happened, but I was lucky that my MOS only had 3 of us that were qualified to do said maintenance on the weapons all throughout CENTCOM, so all throughout the Middle East. So I got to bounce around. I was in Kuwait, I was in Bahrain, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. I had a great time. It was pretty awesome. I wouldn't trade it for the world. After that, I came back, stuck around for IPS Maintenance Battalion for a while, got out of the Marine Corps, but joined the reserves, the Wisconsin National Guard. Did that for 3 years, just kind of dip my toes in, see if I could hash it out for 20 years, get the retirement and all that. And it wasn't for me. So 7 years total, got out. Now I'm doing my thing at a lumber company, and that's going pretty well so far.
So how many countries did you say you were in during those 7 years?
So Kuwait, Bahrain. I stopped in Djibouti for like 30 minutes maybe. Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. So 6 total if you count Djibouti, 5 if you don't. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, busy time in life.
Yeah. But it was cool. Like I said, I went with a great group of guys. Still talk to them every day. I mean, we had a great time, whether it was just hanging out. In Kuwait, there's not a lot to do. You do maintenance on stuff that comes back, but unless you're out, there's not a ton to do. So, we worked out, we ate a ton, and then we kind of off for the rest of time being. But I wouldn't trade those memories for the world. It was fantastic. I would definitely do it again, but my body's not built for it anymore. So we're going to stick to just working out here and doing my thing.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm really interested in just like what you did in basic training, like what kind of stuff you had to do, because I've heard a lot of stories about just like basic training and some of the stuff they make you guys do when you're like training up in the military.
Yeah, so I guess it depends. They break it down, at least when I was in, they've changed it since I've been in, but they broke it down into 3 different phases. First phase is like your introductory to the Marine Corps. You're learning about its history. You're learning how to do basic things like drill and marching and stuff like that, how to respond, this and that. The second phase is where you kind of get integrated into the firearms. You go up to, so let me backtrack a little bit. There's 2 recruit depots, one in South Carolina, one in San Diego, California. Everybody west of the Mississippi goes to California, except for like Wisconsin and Illinois. I don't know how they did this, but I went to West Coast. So I was and it's like in the heart of San Diego. If you're flying to the airport there, you can see the recruit depot right next to the landing strip or whatever it is.
Is that like where the Navy base is too there?
Yeah, Coronado Bay is just south of there. You take that long bridge all the way over.
Gotcha.
But back into the basic training, I just had to clarify that real quick. So the second phase is like getting integrated into like how the Marine Corps works in tactics. So you do a lot of overnight stuff as far as going out to the field. Maybe you'll stay a couple nights. You'll eat MREs. Like I said, you'll go to the rifle range, and then the third phase is like, all right, you're testing all the knowledge. So you're getting inspections left and right. You have final drill. You qualify on the range. You do what they call the Crucible, which is a 72-hour event where you go kind of station to station, and you learn about Marine Corps history, and you do tactics based on the Marine Corps. And then it ends with this big hike up the Reaper, and it's this glorious moment because you don't get up there till the morning. And then after that, it's like, all right, you get your Eagle Globe and Anchor, you're officially a Marine, and then it's cool because you'll march back to the chow hall, and then you can eat whatever you want because you're kind of restricted on your meals and you don't have time to eat, but you could sit down with your drill instructors. You could ask them questions that you could never ask them before. And they're pretty cool guys, but it's their job to be harsh on you. So it was a great experience. We did get with a lot. There was times where, let's say one guy messes up, the whole platoon pays for it. Doesn't matter what it is. Whole platoon is going to pay for it. So we were like, it's called scuzzing. You take a brush like the size of your hand, and you have to get on your hands and knees, put one hand behind your back and do like a duck squat, and you have to brush the whole deck just like that. And if somebody stands up, you have to restart. Well, somebody stood up too many times, and we ended up on one side, literally with pulling our butts with our feet, dragging ourselves across the floor. Just because it's like a humiliating thing that they do, because they break you down to build you up. I mean, you look back at it and it's hilarious, but at the time you're like, oh my God, man, what is happening? Why did I choose to do this for my career? But it paid dividends in the long run. So anybody that does want to do it, just do some research on the MOSs. It'll pay off, especially if you're early. It's a good stepping stone into a career.
And sorry, what is MOS again?
MOS is your military occupation specialty. It's just your job. Another way of saying your job.
Yeah, so with that, if you could just tell us some like interesting stories about what was going on when you were deployed, and that's kind of what I'm the most interested in right now. So
yeah, so like I said, I worked on all small arms. So usually if I go to a country, let's say I go to Syria, it's because preventative maintenance is due on their weapons. So I'm going there. I got a list of weapons to look at, whether it's on post or it's back in storage. I'll hit those weapons, and whatever else they need looked at, I'll do. But they're so limited on guys, in Syria. So I think at the time I was there, they had a troop cap of like 300 troops in Syria or something like that. So, I go in, all right, one guy's got to come out. So I'm only in there for a couple of weeks at a time. I do what I get done, and then in your free time to relieve these guys that are doing it day and night, the grunts. You take a post for them, or you do something like that. And then sometimes you'll convoy to a different location, these smaller locations, to do their weapons as well, because they don't get touched for a couple of years, and these guys are using them daily. So it's pretty cool. If you guys watched that amazing intro video that these guys made, it had some clips in there from the deployment, and you'll see one of the clips is a Mark 19, a 40 millimeter grenade launcher. It was just empty. Nobody was in the house. We were just shooting the house because it was fun to do. And that's on that system.
You were training.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll call it training. That system is a CROW system. I don't know what CROW stands for, but it's a automated system where the guy doesn't have to stand out in the turret anymore. It's like a PSP or a Nintendo Switch. The guy just controls it in the seat. They got multiple cameras up there, and he can move it, control it, kind of do whatever he wants. So I think that's, at least as far as like the technology side that you work with a lot, I think that'd be cool if you kind of looked into that too, because that's got some interesting stuff to it.
That's wild. Yeah. So taking a step back though, so like when you went into Syria, you were like the one guy there taking care of the 300 other guys' weapons. Is that how it worked? Like you'd be deployed there basically and do the maintenance?
Yeah. I wouldn't say there's like 300 specifically at that base, but whatever weapons they had at that base, I would fly in for 2 weeks. I'd take care of all their weapons, and I'd dish out of there and go somewhere else.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. It was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
You don't get a chance to visit those. I'm never going to go to Syria on vacation. So it's cool to kind of check off the list
That is wild. That's like a place, outside of deployment, it's like a place people can't really go in the world, right?
Yeah, I think I watch a lot of travel vloggers that just kind of do these outrageous trips into Iran and Saudi Arabia is not bad, but these countries, I don't think a lot of people have realized they are a lot more developed than they used to be in the early 2000s, when it was just nothing but war over there. Like Saudi Arabia, so much going on. It's great over there. Same with Kuwait, Bahrain, amazing countries. You can definitely take vacations there. There's, some parts that you should probably stay area of, but like Iran, I don't know how well I'd lean to there. Iraq, you can definitely visit. There's a lot of history in those cities. So if you do get a chance and if it's safe, there's nothing going on at the time, you probably have to do some paperwork, but I'd definitely put it on a list to visit.
Yeah, that's cool. That's definitely different. That, I mean, I'm part of that generation where, like, you know, when we were growing up, it was like Iraq, Afghanistan, where, like, you know, you can't go there, right? So it's funny how quickly that even changes, like, year to year, as things evolve.
Yeah, I mean, because for most of my life, we've been at war in the Middle East. So I've never had that perspective that was ever an option to like go there to visit for any reason, just because it's been so dangerous for so long. But that's kind of interesting to hear that there are some spots now that are like, even in like Iraq, that are safe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to kind of open people's minds. A lot of people have a very fixed mindset when it comes to the Middle East, and that is definitely not the case. Like I said, there's definitely stuff you have to watch out for, but it's no worse than going to Chicago or Detroit or St. Louis or, you know, a big city that people might be scared of. No different than that, and the people are always friendly. I've never had any situations with locals where I felt unsafe or any of my guys felt unsafe too. So probably not the first trip on your list, but it's not a bad idea if you're interested in the history of it. There's a lot of religion there too. Take a look into it. It doesn't hurt to research.
Yeah, I think when I think of places to visit in the Middle East, I think of like the richer countries over there, like Qatar, like where they had the FIFA World Cup, or what's the other one in the UAE, United Arab Emirates?
Yeah, the UAE.
Dubai. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Dubai is like something that I would think of, or like going to see like the Burj Khalifa, which is like a super tall like building, and like those kind of places is what I going on vacation to the Middle East.
Yeah.
It's like the richest places in the world, basically.
Oh yeah, they got a lot of oil over there. But aside from like Syria, I got to visit, like I said, there's history. So I was in Mosul, and right across from where we kind of fortified or whatever was Saddam Hussein's palace. So obviously sometimes they went in there. I didn't get to go in there, unfortunately. And Saddam's a bad part of history, but to be able to see it and kind of witness stuff like that firsthand, gives you a little bit of perspective, but also it's just something you're never gonna get to do again. So I took advantage of it for sure.
Yeah, didn't they used to have like a massive statue of Saddam Hussein that got like torn down like after we like went in there and kicked their ass?
Yeah, I think that was in Baghdad. I'm not 100%, but they definitely had statues of them that they tore down. Yeah.
So you were saying the MG40, or what was the mortar thing?
The Mark 19, it shoots a 40 millimeter grenade.
Okay.
And it can be pretty much anything. It'd be a smoke incendiary, just a live round. It doesn't really classify as a certain thing. And we never actually used them other than, you know, the training purposes. But they're just a fun weapon.
Yeah, so like, I mean, and you said it's like basically it's fully remote controlled. Like you're down in the turret,
yes,
basically.
Yeah, normally it's not when it's just regular mounted. But some of them, that one, and then the 50 cal, like the biggest machine gun there is. You can hook those up to a Crow system, which is that automated system that you just use a remote control, so you don't have to have that guy up top and risk another life for no reason. Now there are like downfalls to it. We were on a convoy and we were heading back to the base, and the turret was just pointed in a direction, and there was a shot that came, a negligent discharge, which is like a huge no-no. You know, you're getting kicked out if you do something like that. I don't know what happened to the guy that did it. I don't know how they found out. That was like a 6-truck convoy with 6 of these on top. So I don't know if they specified it or whatever happened to the guy. Something happened to him for sure. But that's like the downfall of these systems, is people can get a little too relaxed because they know they're safer than before, where they might make a mistake or two. You know, that stray bullet, if it's in a village, it could catch anybody. Animals, kids, parents, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like when the technology gets evolved to the point that you're like, you know, you're kind of detached from it because you're like operating it, not, you know, it's not as hands-on. It's almost like it is like you're playing a video game a little bit, right? Like people you can kind of get that separation from what it is that you're actually controlling. I mean, that's what it sounds like.
I think that's a perfect explanation for it. It kind of takes the reality out of it, and you're, like I said, you feel safe. You feel like, oh, nothing can happen to me. So you get a little more relaxed instead of on edge, which is a disadvantage in a combat zone. But we don't want to put guys' lives at risk that you don't have to put at risk. So there is a huge benefit to them.
Well, yeah, I definitely think with the advancement in technology, I mean, I feel like that's how it's always been for like when it comes to weapons is like we're trying to be able to do the most damage without having to send actual people there to do it. So it's like we have like these weapon systems now that you could be like miles away and you could still like annihilate like a whole like village or town.
Yeah, and I think it's evolving even more than that because we did have stuff. Well, they're getting rid of like urban warfare. That's like just not a thing anymore where you're going house to house. And like the miles away stuff, artillery, we do have M777 howitzers, which is like cannons as wide as, I don't know, maybe 20 yards long, something like that. And they shoot a huge shell. But even those are kind of going away because the drone stuff is taking over so much. It's just drones and HIMARS, like we're in that video. It's just kind of like a backpack for a truck, and it has missiles in it. They can put in the coordinates that they want to hit in the truck, and it'll shoot them out. But you only get 6, 8, or something like that out of it. So that's where all the drone stuff's coming in. That's all anybody's using, or like the defense systems too. I don't know what they're called, but some of these defense systems in the Middle East, the Iron Dome, I think they call it, right? It's crazy what these things can do. So there's really no point to having, at least the way I view it, there's no point to having troops on the ground anymore if you can do anything remotely. But that might lead to bigger causes, such as, I don't want to go as extreme as World War III, but bigger conflicts that, again, people feel safe because they're not on the ground. They're in the United States just controlling a thing, hitting a button. There's no really repercussion to missing or doing something like that.
Detaches kind of the human element of warfare, right? And then, at what point is it gone? I mean, it's like, how do you draw the line, right? Like, how do you know what the right...
Yeah, it's tough to draw the line. I don't really know if there is. I mean, there's got to be a line somewhere. It's definitely gray, but you can't take humanity out of war. Otherwise, it's just going to lead to destruction. There's nothing good about it.
Yeah, because like, I mean, a lot of these weapon systems, it's like before, it's like in war, it's like when you would like shoot and kill somebody, it's like they're like right in front of you, and like you feel the like impact of that. Where it's like now, it's like we said, you can be like somewhere completely safe, like not even like be in the line of like sight to get shot at, and you just like press a button and you just like, you could kill like a bunch of people. So,
oh yeah, you could kill a dozen people and you go home and do a nice hot meal and see your kids and go to the park or whatever you may do. Whereas, it used to be, all right, that happened. I shot somebody, I killed them. Now I have to go back. I got nobody to really talk to. So you got to deal with it internally. Which I know a lot of these guys struggle with PTSD and stuff like that. It's not good at all. But thankfully the VA has those associations that help out, and there's plenty of resources that they can use for that.
Yeah. So did you always know you wanted to be in the Marines, or like did that happen in high school? What kind of drew you to it?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I didn't really have any family. Like later on, I found out that my grandfather was in the Army. But other than that, no family affiliation. And I knew I wanted to join the military, but not the Marine Corps. At first, like all throughout high school, like the first half, maybe 3/4 of high school, I wanted to join the Air Force. Couldn't tell you a reason why. Not one.
Planes are cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I was more so looking to set up for a future job, which is why the Air Force would lead in such a good path. But then I wanted like a more challenge aspect to it too, which is where the Marine Corps came in. Excuse me. And it was a great experience. I chose the toughest. They had the best uniforms. So I looked great while doing it. But yeah, it was originally the Air Force. I went for the Marine Corps just because they were tougher. They looked cooler. And that's what drew me to them. That was about it. That was the end of that. I was dead set. I didn't really have a college path, let's say. I could have gone to college, but I feel like in the first 4 years after high school, I wouldn't have got out of it than what I'm getting out of it now. So it's definitely it a good stepping stone of maturity that I needed in order to kind of figure things out and what I wanted to do actually in my career.
Yeah, and I mean, going the military route, the one huge benefit of it is like it's a job that you can get paid for, but then also you get like education and skills that you can use when you're done to get a job where it's like, and then you don't have like the downside of like if you go to college, you have to take out a bunch of loans to go to college and you don't get paid to go to college. So it's a lot better than that.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. I have a couple classes till I finish up my bachelor's and I'll get my master's all for free. All thankful for the military, which you can actually start. I started while I was in. They have a tuition assistance program that'll cover 100% of your fees for college. And then after you get out, they have the Montgomery and the post 9/11 GI Bill, which will pay for your school. And then they also pay for housing because they know if you're a full-time student, you can only work a part-time job and they want you to get on your feet. And then actually, if you're a resident of Wisconsin or a resident from Texas, they have their own separate GI Bills. So I could use my Wisconsin GI Bill, but I have to use it for a UW school, which is still fantastic. But I think, like, initially, I just thought it was a good stepping stone because I didn't know I wanted to go to college. I had no idea that I would get college for free. But it is a huge perk. If you want to join the military just for college, just do it. I mean, take advantage of it. You'll still get great life experience. You'll have a lot to add onto your resume, and you can kind of cater your MOS or job to what you want to do. Especially now, they have a lot of cybersecurity stuff, a lot of safety stuff, a lot of drone stuff. So you can cater it to what you'd like to do in the future for sure.
And then do you like, is it kind of similar? Like, can you also go to like schools in like Minnesota? Because I know like we have like reciprocity in Minnesota as well.
I'm not sure. So the post 9/11 I can use anywhere. I can use for any school in the country. But the UW one, I'm not exactly sure on that because I know there is reciprocity or whatever, whatever that word is. But I'm not sure if that carries over.
Yeah, and I mean, it essentially just means that you get in-state tuition for Minnesota schools, which I guess in your case doesn't really matter because they're going to be paying for it anyway. So.
Yeah. So might be something worth looking into. But like I said, with both of those, I could get my doctorate if I want. I'm not gonna, but I could get my doctorate for free. No student debt, no nothing. I have great training, great resume. So it's a good opportunity, and it's not for everybody. I'm not trying to pitch it to anybody, but if you don't know what you want to do and you need a stepping stone, definitely use that.
Very cool. So, I guess I know you touched a little bit on like the training. What was it like physically like? Like, did you feel when you went over on deployment, like, were you the fittest in your life? Like, how was it physically?
It was interesting because the Marine Corps praises a guy that can run. If you can run, the Marine Corps will love you, which is kind of weird because you think it'd be the opposite. Like, hey, we want guys that can lift heavy weights and carry people and this and that, which yes, is the case. But if you can run an 18-minute 3-mile, you'll get promoted through the ranks quick. Your officers will love you because that's all they do is run. But yeah, I actually, in boot camp training, I feel like I got weaker because it is so specialized. Like, it's not a 360-degree training. There's training you for a specific thing. And then before deployment, I was in pretty good shape. And then while I was on deployment, I got the best shape of my life because there's nothing to do. Like I said, you
push-ups all day in the desert.
Yeah. You kind of, they have these kind of grungy gyms, but it gets the job done. And you can the way my job worked is I could do it any time of day. So I could go to the armory, figure out what I got to do for the day and leave for 3 hours, go work out and come back. And it's open 24 hours because everybody's coming back from countries on different shifts and this and that. So you can kind of make your own schedule a little bit. But yeah, I was in the best shape of my life running as far as cardio and lifting. Maybe not lifting. I've gotten a lot better now. I kind of fell off the cliff when I got out. I got a little too relaxed and complacent. But I've hopped back on the horse, doing a lot better eating. Very strict diet now. And then getting the gym twice a day too is strictly helped me a lot.
And so would you do like combat training too then? Like, obviously like, weapons training, but would you do like any sort of physical combat training?
Not in a sense, unless it was on your own. So they have 2 tests a year. They have the physical fitness test, which is like the first half of the year, January to July. And then they have the combat fitness test, which is July to December. And the PFT is a 3-mile run, as many pull-ups as you can, as many sit-ups as you can. And I think they have a plank as an option in there too. And then the CFT is a little more catered to that combat training. It's a 440-meter run in like combat boots and gear, and then it's a ammo can lifts, so kind of like an overhead press with ammo cans. And then it's like this obstacle course where you have to crawl, run, you have to carry people, throw a grenade, do push-ups. And I always threw up after that one. I got a perfect score every time, but I always threw up because the 440-meter sprint and you're going all out, and then you get like 30 seconds and you got to go to the ammo cans, and then you get like 30 seconds and then you got to go into this 100-meter like sprint back and forth, carry people kind of thing. It was fun, but like I said, the PFT, if you can run, you'll be fantastic in the military. They'll love you, but it is a great way to get in shape as well.
Yeah, the lifting after sprinting is like the worst combination for me too. We used to do these things called caveman runs. Like you take 2 dumbbells, you have a partner, they do a wall squat, you run a lap around the track with the dumbbells above your head, hand the first dumbbell to the guy who's doing the squat, run a lap with the other one above your head, hand the other one, run a lap, and switch. I used to puke during those every time.
Oh yeah, that doesn't sound fun at all. But there's plenty of ways to get in shape and train, and you have to kind of cater it to yourself. You guys know, whatever works for Matt, it's probably not going to work for me. We have different body types; their bodies work differently. So right now, I'm kind of, if you guys know Mike Gerzertel, him I've listened a lot to, so I'm more of in like a growth phase. I'm trying to build more muscle, so I've got a lot of hypertrophy work right now, a lot of kind of recovery days, and you brought up like that sprint and then lift kind of thing. I'm trying to work cardio in, but it's tough because if you do it before your lift, all right, well then I can't get as much out of my lift. And if you do it after your lift, all right, science says you're killing your gains. So it's trying to find that happy medium of cardio and lifting, which maybe we can dive into a little bit of that. But it's tough to find the perfect training regimen for you. I know a lot of guys do the PPL, the push-pull legs. For me, that just doesn't work because I don't feel like I'm hitting a certain body part the way I should be, or the way I'm focused on. So I have to break it up individually. I have a chest day, I have a shoulders and back day, leg day, obviously, and then arms. Most people don't give arms a day. I give arms a day just because I like it so much. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely resonate with that. I mean, I'm trying to, I have been for a while. I've just been trying to get my lifting numbers up as high as I can get them. Yeah. But my cardiovascular ability has definitely declined because I've been focusing so much on strength. But yeah, I mean, to your point, it's you focus on strength and it's your cardiovascular abilities decline, and then if you try to focus on getting in shape, running and stuff like that, and all of a sudden you can't lift as much.
Yeah. And I think I've looked into him a little bit, not a crazy amount, but Nick Bear, if you ever heard of him, he's the perfect hybrid athlete. This guy runs 8 to 10 miles every morning, and he's absolutely ripped. So whatever program he's got going on, it works for him. But you also have to have that discipline to get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, run 8 miles. Then he runs his company. He sells all the supplements. So he's got to run the company. He has 2 or 3 kids, so he's got to manage all that. And I think it all comes down to discipline. A lot of people like motivation. I tend to stray away from motivation because it comes in wavelengths. I can be really motivated if I scroll on Instagram and I see a reel of Joe Rogan or David Goggins running or something like that. My motivation's up, but that might be at 10 p.m. but I'm not really going to do anything. So having that discipline is a huge key for me, especially with my meals. I'll eat some eggs, a little bit of Greek yogurt, and a banana in the morning. I'll have a chicken breast at 10 o'clock. I'll have a chicken breast after my workout at 2 o'clock. And then that's so low calorie throughout the day that it kind of frees me up for dinner to where I can have usually a pork or beef or a steak or something like that with a starch and a vegetable. So that works for me because I do have that variety of dinner at least where I can kind of eat a little bit more and fill up and get some taste rather than just chicken. I know a lot of people don't like eating chicken left and right, but just finding whatever works for that person. And then, like I said, the discipline is the biggest aspect. If I think whenever you don't want to do it is when you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, it's like, I mean, exactly what you're saying. It's not about like motivation. It's about like a mindset. So like, I just started training I'm just in like a half Ironman at the end of July. So that's, you run or you swim like just over a mile, you bike like 56, and then you run a half marathon. So like 13.1. And like none of those are like, I mean, it's just like a slow burn, right? Like it's basically like 6 hours of just like a very slow burn. But like in my training, I'm like, all right, I can go really hard at these cardio workouts, or I can just be like, I'm going to train slowly and let it build up into this race so that like my natural steady state is just like a person who's capable of doing half Ironman. And so like the way I'm trying to do that is like not get too hyped for the workouts, right? Like wake up, and if I have to do yard work, just like go do yard work patiently and like work hard. But like each thing I'm doing around the yard, like I'm going to rake and I'm going to do it intentionally. I'm going to, whatever, move these pots. I'm going to do it like intentionally. And then, then I'm going to go run an hour at some point that day. But like, it's not going to be like all right, get myself jacked up. It's like, no, like this is just like the next step on my checklist. And I'm trying to build that mentality, right? Of like, do things diligently and like, just kind of change the way you look at work. So it's not like a hype. It's just like, this is what I do.
For the Ironman, what is the total distance? Like, what's the distance for them? And like, what's the order that you do the exercises?
Yeah, so it's 70.3 miles total, and it's swim, then bike, then run. And this is the first. I mean, I've done like sprints before, so like short ones. There's people who are way more into it than I am. Like, my fiance's brother actually is, who got me into it, and her sister as well, I think, has done one. So it's like there's definitely like a community around it, and there's like people more into it. I'm like really just getting into it. My brother's done a couple as well. But like everyone who does it and does it well, it's like you just notice that, they just kind of like bake that into their life. Like they just every day they're working hard on something, and then like the Ironman is just kind of like the natural result of the way that they build their life, right? It's not like it's a big thing. It's just like, oh yeah, that's just like what they do now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know you were doing that, so that's awesome.
Yeah, well, we haven't done it yet. We'll see how it goes.
Well, yes. But what kind of steered you towards that? I mean, obviously you've had like siblings and family members do it. Are they kind of the ones that pushed you to do it? Like, hey, this is awesome, you should do this? Or is it kind of you setting a goal and trying to accomplish that goal?
Yeah, it's something that's been on my radar for a while. I was actually going to do one in like 2020 that got canceled because of COVID. So I like got all this stuff and started training, and I was about a month out, and then it got canceled. And I always knew what to do it. And then I just got fat during COVID. So I was like, but yeah. But, I moved back to Wisconsin like a year and a half ago. I started training again more. So I'm like, just kind of back in that a state where I'm like, you know what, I have time to like actually train for this kind of thing. Do more training in my day-to-day life. And yeah, it's always been kind of a goal of mine. So.
Yeah, and you've mentioned off the podcast too, but you've mentioned that you've done like these exercises individually, but have you done like a workout yet where it's like you're getting used to like having to like do a swim and then do a bike and then do a run like back to back to back?
Yeah, so they call those like bricks in your training program. It's like you do, each combination basically. Yeah, they're harder because like you swim. Whenever I swim, my calves are just like cramping, and so you get out of that and you go bike or like you go run or getting off the bike. It's like your legs are just like cooked, and then you have to go run for like an hour, and it's like, oh man, I'm like waddling out there, and but that's like what it is, right? Like it's not even really building up your muscles. It's just like building up your pain tolerance more than anything. That you just don't get bothered when like, oh, my foot feels like it's falling asleep, whatever, like that happens.
Yeah, and I would imagine that the worst part is like right when you get off the bike, like the transition from the bike to the run, and that once you kind of like get into the run or get into the bike, like the transition, the pain from like transitioning from one exercise to another like starts to get better.
Yeah, and in shorter races, in my experience, it's like it's always a transition where like you'll get a cramp or something. So yeah, it's like getting your body into that new like steady state. It's tricky. And the big thing that they always say is just like eat a bunch of salt. So it's like, basically replace whatever electrolytes you're losing during the race.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's all a mindset. Have you ever done it without, like, do you train with music, or have you ever done it without music to where you're just kind of listening to your mind?
Dude,
talk?
yeah, it's honestly, once you're doing more than like an hour of training, getting rid of the music is really helpful for me, at least, because it's like the music is great when you're trying to like whatever lift 500 pounds like Isaac the other day.
Yeah.
But like when you're not lifting, or you're not like trying to, it's like we're saying, it's not motivation. It's like almost like the peace, you got to get to like a very clear headspace. And for me, it's like sometimes just listening to the birds or like the cars helps me do that better.
Yeah, finding something specific to hone in on. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, and I mean the mindset I feel like is completely different when it comes to like doing work for a long period of time, like an Ironman or like a run or a swim or a bike, than just like doing like something that's really hard, but you get it done in like a few seconds. Like for a lift, it's not about like, it's like a different kind of motivation. Like for a lift, I don't need to like have in my mind like set that I need to like do this work for like a long period of time. It's just like I just need to like get my adrenaline up so that I can rip the weight up and then immediately put it down and be done. So
No, I'm like the same way even in like my, like, so for work, I just sit on a computer all day, and like early in my career, I'd play like pump up music during my work day. And then like you get a few months into that and I'm like doing bad damage to my brain just like sitting there doing this. Right. I'm like, all right, you got to like, and I started, that's when I started getting into podcasts, because it's like, you got to find more of like that, like steady thing. Just kind of like get used to working hard with like quiet in the background, and then that becomes your new, like, you associate that with the peace and the quiet, right? Instead of like, oh, to work hard I need something to jack me up.
I mean, you listen to like you could play like white noise, or there's like specific music that they like make that's supposed to like help concentration or like help you through your workday. It's not like hype music where it's like you were describing,
like
it's
the lo-fi, lo-fi stuff.
Yeah. Have you guys ever heard of a term called misogi?
No.
It's a Japanese term, and I don't know if like the Ironman qualifies as this. Like for me, I'm doing a 10K this year, my first ever 10K. Now this is because I'm horrible at cardio. Hated cardio my entire life, so this will be like the longest distance I ever ran at one time. But I'm doing it because of this term misogi, which is a Japanese term, and it doesn't really mean one specific thing. It more so means pick one really hard thing to do in the period of a year that you can work towards. Let's say work towards, because yours in July, you work towards it the first half of the year, and then you feel accomplished the next half of the year. And then the next year you pick something even harder than that to work towards. Kind of gives you a goal to accomplish, but also fixes your mindset to focus in on something that you want to accomplish. So for you, it's that specific training of swimming. I don't know if you struggle in one area more than the most, but to better yourself in one way versus another.
Yeah, totally. I gotta try that. Like I don't like the biking. I should just be like, all right, I'm doing the Ironman, whatever, but like I should just get myself to bike for 5 hours straight at one point this year. You're right. That's like that's kind of a cool thing. Then next year be like, okay, now I gotta do it 10 hours straight at some point. Or I don't know, like, figure out. Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, just do some long bike rides strictly because either you're not good at it, or because mentally you don't want to do it. You just have to overcome that stepping stone, because eventually if you do a 30, 50 mile bike ride, you're going to be like, oh, hi, 20 miles, that's easy. And then you can kind of make that a part of your routine then.
Yeah. I actually, that's like a good point, because like I actually found that like there's been a lot of like, because I used to wrestle in college. And there were a lot of like I always hated running too. I hated cardio, and like the running workouts and stuff like that, like the sprints. I always dreaded it beforehand. Like I was always just like, I don't want to do this. This sucks. But I always felt like the really hard workouts, like after it was done, I was like, oh, I can do that again. Like that wasn't actually that bad. Like I was just in my own head beforehand.
Yeah, and you feel that much more accomplished afterwards too, I think. Yeah, you as a wrestler, you guys got it crazy with that cardio. I remember in high school, these guys were sprinting left and right. And I did a little bit of jujitsu, but I mean, and the cardio for like a 5-minute bout or something like that is absolutely insane. You don't think that it's that tough compared to like running or anything like that, but you're using your whole body, and you're strenuous the whole time. So it is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like for like going into like the wrestling stuff, I mean, like the matches in college are 7 minutes, so it's a 3-2-2. So first period's 3 minutes, and then 2 minutes, 2 minutes. So we're only wrestling for 7 minutes in a match, but in the practice room, like we're getting in shape to where we can wrestle for like an hour nonstop at like a live pace.
Yeah. Not to mention, you guys are probably dropping 10 pounds right before a fight to make weight and doing all this kind of crazy stuff on the front end too.
Yeah, I mean, the cutting weight is definitely a big part of it. But you know, obviously, just like anything, it's like there's a smart way to do it. Some people don't do it the smart way, and then they end up paying for it. But if you're doing it right, you're doing it smart, like you normally feel pretty good for your actual like competition. So
yeah, I've like done just like a little bit of sparring, like nothing like legitimate, but it is funny. There's like a difference of the exhaustion you feel if you're doing like a sprint versus like actually like fighting against somebody else, because I feel like there's like the emotional psychological piece of like you're trying to think ahead of your opponent, not just like push yourself to your max limit. Or like, do you feel that way?
I mean, with I look at wrestling more like interval training. So it's not like a full-on sprint for 7 minutes. It's like I'm kind of like going at a nice, easy pace, and then when I see my opportunity to score, I'm sprinting to score that takedown. So it's like I'm on my feet. The first period, I might be feeling the guy out, like trying to figure him out. That's like pretty low pace. Like my heart rate's not like going crazy, but then it's like, okay, I get on their leg. Like now I'm trying to score. So that's a sprint. And then I take him down and it's like, okay, now it's kind of like slower pace. Like, you know, I'm trying to control them on bottom, but that's more like how I see it for wrestling. But yeah, I mean, to your point, like even with that, like wrestling is just like a completely different kind of cardio and shape. It's like I could like train running and get like super in shape for running, and then still show up in the wrestling room and be absolutely destroyed after like a 15-minute go. Like I'm just like dying, sucking wind, because it's just like it's like a type of shape that like that's so unique to the sport that like no other training, like it helps a little bit, but it doesn't help a lot.
You can't really replicate it. Well, so one thing I'm remembering. So I mean, Nick, you kind of asked like how I got into cardio. Actually, one of the big reasons I got into like cardio in general, I have a cousin who she rode in college, and she was like really into like ultra marathons and stuff. So I ran a marathon with her out in San Francisco like 8 years ago. But she like after she graduated college, she set the world record for like her age group for women of distance erged in 24 hours. So like rowing machine erging. She literally just sat on a erg for 24 hours and set the world record for the distance that she went. So like, yeah, it's there's like levels to it, you know. It's always like, I mean, yeah, that steady state cardio, like, yeah, they're just crazy levels. I just want to shout out Sadie.
Yeah. Can I ask how good in shape you were and what your time was for that marathon?
Oh, it was bad. Yeah. I was like high 4 hours. Like I was on like a 4-hour pace until I got to about 5 miles left, and then my calves started cramping. Well, like around mile 17, my biceps started cramping, and that was a new feeling. And then, because I was like, how can your biceps cramp when you run? But everything cramps at some point. But I remember around like mile 20, I started like literally my whole legs were seizing up, and like I was looking down at my calves, and they were like twitching, just like insane, right? And I'm like, so I'd like sit down on the side of the road and like massage them and stand up and like go 500 yards. Then one would seize up and I'd just sit. But yeah, part of it was like in my training, I got like not a stress fracture, but like close to it in my foot. So at that time, I only went up to like 17 miles in my previous training run. You're supposed to get up to like low 20s. So I was like pretty much in uncharted territory when I was doing that one. But that's, again, part of why I'm like getting back into that stuff again, because I feel like I had like one round in my life of like doing like the endurance stuff, but I never like conquered it. I just kind of like did it. So I'm kind of, yeah, I don't know. It'd be fun to actually like do it and feel like you can do it competitively and like actually race, not just like finish. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, isn't the leg cramp stuff like you were just low on electrolytes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely like, you know, you got to you got to just keep eating electrolytes basically. But part of it too is like it's not really like, I mean, it actually is natural for our bodies to go that far, but like not if you're not training for it. So like if you don't spend a certain amount of time with like that much stress on your joints and on your limbs, they're just kind of gonna go.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that like human beings are designed to be able to run really long periods of time just because like, back before modern stuff for like getting food and stuff like that, we would have to chase our food around for like hours until they just until they just got tired and just like gave up, and then you would just go and kill it just like that.
Well, have you heard like there's this whole movement of like you have to run barefoot? Have you guys heard about that?
I've not. No.
You know who? What's it, Liver King?
Oh yeah,
Well,
I've heard of
he's
it,
like
yeah.
very. Yeah, it's not like his thing, but that was one of his like 9 tenets was like walk around barefoot, basically like, touch the earth. But like, there's people that are like, kind of like cardio nerds, kind of that are, they're like, oh, you have to run barefoot because it messes like your feet have to then move in like every different direction, and it makes the muscles in your feet better. And it's kind of interesting actually, because like when you go on a run, if you're not used to it, one of the first things that will go is you'll get like foot cramps. Because like you're just like your feet need to figure out how to actually work.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think that's a great point that a lot of people don't think about. Is especially I have a young child now, and so footwear is a big thing, and how footwear forms our feet. Our feet I think are supposed to be a lot more wide, and some people do have wide feet, but like I have very narrow feet, probably due to footwear when I was younger, and that's just how they shaped. So. Yeah, feeling the earth, but I think just to that point of that's natural. That's how it's supposed to be,
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen them, but they actually make like running shoes now that are more like they like look like feet, like they have like toes.
Yeah, they have the toes in there.
But yeah, I've definitely heard that. Like if you do more things barefoot, you'll build up strength and like muscles you didn't even know you had. Like all of a sudden your foot can like grip onto things and like do things that you never thought a foot was designed to do.
Step on some nails, get thicker skin.
Yeah, I think it would help with that. But like humans running long distances, starting with this 10K, well, first we'll see how I do with that. Maybe that's my limit. I don't know. But there's this, the Whitewater Trails. I think it's like a 25K or something like that. I'd love to build up to that. I'll never get to like David Goggins level where he's running in Death Valley for 100 miles or whatever it is. But I think like surpassing your limits every so often is great. Mentally and physically for your feet, for your legs, for your body. It's just how like you said, we're born to be 1,000 years ago or whatever it may be. We were hunting our own food and everything like that. No footwear existed until some guy found out he could make money off of it, and then and then he rolled with it.
Well, look at 1,000 years later, we have cities. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, even back then, I mean, like footwear was just like a piece of leather you put on the bottom of your foot so that if you step on a rock, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah,
like, that's all it was.
I'm curious because I know like in the old like war movies, a big thing is always like, oh, keep your boots dry. Was that a thing in the Marines? Like you had to keep your boots?
Yes, not so much in modern day, but yeah, when they had like trench warfare in World War II, they'd call it trench foot, where your feet are just soaked from the water drains into the pits. That's the lowest point. And if you don't change your socks, change your boots, you're going to get bad infections. You won't be able to walk on them for a couple of days. That was one of their biggest things is, hey, if you're in a hike, let's say we're doing a 15-mile hike or something like that with a ruck, you're stopping at that 7.5 mile marker and you're changing your socks. They make you change your socks. You can't double up socks because of friction. Like foot care is one of the biggest things they preach for that reason. If you don't have your feet, you can't keep going. So like you said, trench foot is a little previous, but they still hone in on changing your socks and foot care and everything like that.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of leads me to a question. So when you would do like your rucks and stuff and your stuff outside, would they ever like make you like do that in like extreme weather? Like if it was like pouring rain or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I don't think they like intentionally made it in extreme weather, but if there was extreme weather, they weren't stopping it. Their like motto is train how you fight. So if we can't control the weather, you're still going to train regardless to get used to the isolation. In some cases they would, especially kind of like with the stuff going on in Eastern Europe and stuff like that, and they have pretty brutal winters out there. So in California, I forget the name of it, they would send you up to cold weather training, and you'd spend a couple months up there doing everything in the cold. You're sleeping in the cold, eating the cold, working out in the cold just to get used to it. it's just a great way to train. They wouldn't stop anything.
Yeah. It's just like I hear people when they like train in Denver, Colorado, like at the high altitudes. If you get used to like running there, it's like you go somewhere else, it's like a lower altitude, and it's like all of a sudden you're running a lot better just because you could actually breathe more air.
Yeah, like taking the donut off the bat. You get yourself
Exactly
acclimated to something else, and then boom, it gets easier, and when it's game time, it just you know how to handle it.
Yeah, and I mean like you were saying about running in the cold, like running in the cold sucks because it like burns your lungs and like your nose is running and like all this stuff. It's so bad. Like I would never run in the cold.
No, I would cough for 15, 20 minutes afterwards. But we're going back to discipline, and this is something that I failed to do over the winter. I didn't do much cardio because it wasn't nice outside. Now it's nice outside. I got my garage gym open and I'm trying to run every night. So it's just that progress. And yeah, it's based on where you live. Wisconsin's not a great place to run in the winter, but I could have gone on a treadmill and I didn't do that. So
it's like Goggins says, he's like, the colder it is, the more I like to run. He's crazy, but he's awesome.
Species.
Yeah, Goggins is insane. But like some of the stuff he does though, it's like, yeah, he does do a lot of motivation stuff, but some of the stuff that he calls motivation, I'm like, that's not really motivation. It's like your kidneys are failing. You should go to the doctor and stop running.
Yeah. He does it a little extreme. Like in his runs, he's got a broken foot and his skin's peeling off. You should probably stop and seek medical attention. Any normal person would. But for some reason, he's just got to keep going. Or his big thing is no rest days. And it's trying to balance that with the hypertrophy work, because the only way that your muscles are going to grow is if you rest them. That's when the I don't know what they call it, something where your muscles are sucking in all the protein. It's because they're resting. That's how they grow. And if you train 7 days a week, 2 times a day, you're just not going to get the same results. So you have to find the right program and do a lot of stuff. I would follow some stuff that he does mentally, but physically, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure he like ran himself into rhabdo, which rhabdo is like where I think it's like your kidneys start breaking down because your body basically starts like eating your muscles and peeing them out, and you start peeing brown, and the next thing you know, you're on the ground. So yeah, there's levels to it.
Yeah, there's definitely a point where it's not about being tough, like obviously be tough, but like also like don't like kill yourself doing it. So
yeah, it's not worth dying over a run. You can you can take a break. Any normal person would. Nobody's gonna dog on you for failing out of a 50K or something like that. You'll be all right.
I mean, with that, I mean, I think I want to get into your patent and talk about MVP robotics. I really want to get into that discussion. So take it away.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think this, it definitely relates to a lot of what we've been talking about. Like we've been talking about, obviously next time, training for the Marines and for deployment. I myself actually, so my last year of college, Dartmouth did this project where basically you work with like a local engineering firm, and you're kind of like a student consultant. So they'll come to you with a problem and ask you to solve it. And it's like your first kind of real world experience of like being an engineer, right? Like it's one thing to learn in the classroom, another thing to be like, oh, somebody needs this. How am I going to build it? So at the time, actually, the Dartmouth football team had developed with their coach, Buddy Tevens. They had developed this tackling dummy. So it's basically like an RC car with a big foam dummy on top that they were using to do like no contact football practices. And somehow like Buddy had talked to some special forces people or something. They kind of knew that there was like other applications for like the RC base. And they came up with the idea of like, okay, we could make these tackling dummies actually used for like combat training. And the challenge was they actually wanted to be able to make them register when they get shot by bullets, which is like a harder problem than it sounds like, because there's a lot of different signals you can use to be like, okay, this thing just got shot. Like you'd stick like a little accelerometer in there and be like, if the thing shakes violently, it just got shot. But that's hard on like rough terrain. You could do like, audio, like if there's a loud ping, but that's also like, there's a bunch of signaling problems when you try to do it that way. And ultimately we kind of came up with this design. So there were 7 students working on it. I was working mostly on like the the electronics and the software part of it, which I can get into more. But anyway, we came up with this design where we took this foam mold and then put a series of capacitors inside of it. So basically think big tinfoil sheets inside of this piece of foam. And when the bullet would pass through them, it would short out the circuit. So we'd charge these like tinfoil sheets, bullet passes through, shorts the circuit, and we build a little like PCB circuit board that hooks up to it and like detects which part of the dummy got shot. Yeah, and so then it would be like, you can then integrate it with an app. It shows you like, oh, it's a body shot on the app. It like lights up the body got shot. So yeah, it was a very cool project. And actually there was a research advisor at Thayer at the time at the engineering school. His name was John Currier. He really carried the project. Like I had worked a little bit under him in a lab before that, and it was kind of like his baby, right? Like he talked to Buddy, the football coach, and I think Buddy basically came to him and said, like, can we make this idea a reality? He had the idea of bringing it to our engineering class with the students. It's actually a previous engineering class that come up with like the football tackling dummy. John brought it to us and said, can we do this for like this other application? And John was an awesome guy. And it was just like a really cool project. So anyways, like by the end of the class, we like got this thing to a place where it had been tested, it worked. We did a bunch of like materials testing to get the right consistency of the foam. We got the app all working, and we presented it, and then it's continued to grow from there. So the CEO of the company today, his name is Quinn. He was actually on the first group of engineering students that made the tackling dummy. He worked with us closely when we built the training dummy. They call it like the MVP Tactical, like the Hector. There's like an acronym for it. And they actually recently signed a large contract with the Department of Defense. And yeah, it sounds like they're just kind of rocking at this point. Like they have the tech worked out. They can know how to make them. And yeah, it's cool to see the way this thing has kind of been, all the different contributors from like the Dartmouth community. And then, the other, just the way that it's grown. It's been really cool. And like, I started getting involved in this when I was like 22, and I only spent like 6-7 months working on it, but it's crazy to see like how it's evolved and developed. It's really cool.
Yeah. I guess I'm just curious on like what, that's really cool. That you were able to be a part of something like that. But I guess I'm just wondering like what, like for the military, what are the applications that they're going to be like using it for? Like what sort of training scenarios are they going to use it?
Yeah. So the main thing is Nick, you can probably speak to this in some of the training you did. Like I think it's helpful to be able to have like something moving around in the room with you that you have to shoot at. And also you have to coordinate with maybe another guy in the room with you to shoot at that thing in a safe way, right? Like how do you handle, like that's such a dynamic and kind of like intimidating environment. The feedback we were getting at the time was like these special forces guys just say like it's really hard to train for because it is such a dynamic environment. Like how do you even remotely replicate that in a physical way, right? Not just like with like a video game simulation.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, because when we would do like a lot of the examples on there were pistol qual, because it's usually like a close combat kind of thing that you'd use this for. And, our normal pistol qual before these were to come out, it's just, all right, there's my target over there. I'm 25 meters out and I'm just going to shoot it. There's no movement. There's no nothing to it. So it doesn't simulate that train how you fight feel. So I think these things are going to pay dividends to the DoD. Now we are kind of getting away from that urban warfare. I don't know how much we'll ever get away from it. There's always going to be some, but it'll definitely have an effect on these guys. And obviously the special forces guys are going to have it first because they get all the nice stuff first. But from the videos I saw, it looked amazing. It looked intense, especially like in the buildings when they would come out. They used to just have these signs. You probably seen it like playing Call of Duty, kind of like the thing. They would press a remote, the sign would flip out, you'd shoot them, and then it'd go back. But that doesn't really simulate. A guy's not going to come out like that. He's going to move around the room so you can hear him. You can kind of use that audio aspect, and maybe they can work that in there to have different ones in the rooms represent different people and have them replicate that sound to it as well. Maybe you have a baby crying, so it's muffling another guy moving on the other side of the house, something that they have planned.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was really, but when I was working on it, we were like really in the nuts and bolts of it. Like I remember me and another guy, his name was Dan. He was like really into it. He actually ended up working with them. Um, Anyways, we were walking around campus trying to figure out what the best frequency to stream back. Basically, we were trying to build an app that could communicate with the circuit board. And we were like, all right, can we just use Bluetooth, or do we have to use like different radio frequencies or whatever to actually like get the best, it has to go with a strong signal up to like a mile. So we were just like walking around campus, like pinging each other with these little like antennas. So we were like that level of development, right? We were like, let's just start from nothing. But it's like one of the definitely cool areas for growth with it was just the software of like, can you like pre-program training simulations? So like, like each robot knows exactly how it's going to move, where it's going to go, how it's going to respond if it gets shot. Like maybe one of them, it's like a single headshot, it goes down. Maybe another one, it's three for whatever reason. Like can the soldier or can the trainee respond to that if they don't expect it? Like those kinds of things. There's a lot of opportunity, I think. So.
Yeah. I mean, that is fantastic that you guys worked on that. That's something I don't think most people would have ever thought of, kind of developing training. You always think it's capped out until somebody comes out with some new stuff. It's the same thing I think with music. Oh, how can they invent new music? I feel like I've listened to it all, and then somebody comes out with an awesome song. But again, you don't know where they're going to take this and how they're going to develop it. It could turn into something, with the AI robots and everything that's coming out. They could use your system on those robots and kind of put, I forgot the proper term for it, but the tinfoil in the robot and kind of, just develop it more. So it's more realistic. You get more realistic training to somebody instead of an RC car going around. Maybe it's that robot walking around the house. It can go up and down stairs. Maybe that's the next step. But it'll be really cool to kind of follow tabs on it and see where it goes in the future.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious for like training scenarios. Like, is like the RC kind of thing that it's on, is it like pretty loud, or is it like quiet enough to where you could like simulate like someone like sneaking around like a building?
Yeah, that was actually like one of the questions we worked on for a bit. It's not too loud. I think it got louder because the original base we had built, the materials, if a bullet shot them, would just splinter and fragment. So like they had to ultimately make it like out of some kind of metal and like very thick rubber. And then it gets heavier. And when it gets heavier, the engine has to get stronger, so it gets louder. But it's kind of cool. We worked through all these different problems. And the funnest part was like, they'd iteratively take these things down to like, different training facilities and like have some guys shoot at it and give feedback and be like, what works well, what feels clunky, and like how can we keep tuning it?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that kind of leads me into another question with it, because it was made of like the rubber silhouette kind of thing. Whenever they shot into it and it's censored, obviously it would stop moving right there. But like the cleanup afterwards, did you guys have to like pick the bullets out of it afterwards? Was it that hard of a material?
They passed through fully. Pretty much all the bullets would fully pass through. So there was interesting problems there. And it's actually like an economics problem, which is weird because so the base was very expensive. Like buying one of these bases is like thousands of dollars. The foam dummies was like a couple $100. So you put the foam dummy on top, the bullets would basically pass all the way through, but we had to find the right foam, basically the right like brittleness of the foam so that when it gets shot, it doesn't pull through and make a big gaping hole. It only should make a hole as big as the bullet. And so when you do that, like say I shoot one bullet straight through and another bullet just slightly off center of that last one, I hardly damage the material beyond what it previously was. And what that means is like one of these things can eat like 500 rounds before you actually have to put a new foam dummy on top, right? And so it was like a replaceable parts problem almost. It's like, can we make it so that it's cheap to replace the parts and make each part last long? And that's kind of like the driving force of how you can sell them. Be like, buy the base once, then you just buy the replaceable foam targets and stick them on top.
Yeah, I think that's awesome for a couple of reasons. One, because you can use it for 500 shots, so it does have a lifespan. But two, because in these urban environments, you got to kind of watch out for behind the person too. You don't want to shoot anybody that doesn't need to be shot. So, I mean, and bullets do pass through people. Yeah. But I mean, and you might not have thought like specifically that way to begin with, but it's a great thing that came out of it is, all right, these are pretty realistic. The bullet's going to pass through them, so you have to make sure you know what's beyond that guy, or make sure you had a 45-degree offset so that you don't shoot the person behind them. Something that you don't initially realize, but is beneficial from those.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool. Like we did like 6 months of work on this project, and we definitely like turned this vision into a reality in like a student engineering environment. So it was really just like a great learning opportunity. The guys that were driving it, like, actually worked for MVP, like John, Quinn. I mean, they were really thinking through all this stuff, and it's awesome. Like, I mean, they just signed, like a $200 million contract is on public record. Like, it's a big contract, and like knowing how, like, I mean, the time I spent working with MVP, like, I'm sure they're going to keep evolving it. I'm sure they're going to like tailor it to exactly what, special forces folks or whoever's training with it need. And I think there's a pretty big, audience for the product. So I'm like really excited to see how it keeps growing. It was funny. Like when I graduated, they were like, oh, like we filed for a patent and we got approved. And like, again, like 22-year-old me, I was pretty dumb. I was like, I didn't really realize what it was, like this grand vision they were building towards. I was like just trying to make like a little app on my phone, like actually be able to turn on, right? And be able to show this thing got shot. But like, it's really cool to see like, the vision that these guys had, and what they've built. And yeah, it'll be awesome to watch them just continue to iterate and grow.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable that what was essentially just like a class project turned into something that was actually real. Was this something that like you and like a group of students decided to do, or was this like something that like your professors in your like university was trying to push for?
Yeah, so it was actually, I mean, it was mostly this guy, John Courier, who was like really spearheading the project. He unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, but he was like an awesome guy. I learned a ton about just like how to do engineering from like being underneath him. But what's crazy is they kind of struck gold twice. So like the first time the football team came up with the tackling dummy, that thing went viral, and like a bunch of NFL teams and college teams like actually ordered them. And they were on like some late night talk show, like having a guy tackle one of them. And then like they kind of had their time in the sun, and then like they were like, hey, this RC base is actually pretty awesome, we can put other stuff on it. And then they did it again, and they did it like with actually a harder engineering problem, and like a harder product to sell, because right, like they're expensive, especially like the military ones, and but like they were able to make it happen. They were able to get a contract. So yeah.
This might be a tough question to answer, but do you think that those will eventually tailor to a at-home kind of thing? I mean, you have these guys that aren't in the military that just love the tactics, and they'll do stuff at let's say a commercial range. Do you think it'll eventually evolve to non-DOD, where these commercial ranges can have them, and in a safe environment, local people can use it?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I know like the short answer is like definitely. The longer answer is like I'm sure there will be different protocols and like regulations around how you can, like, I don't know if you can do like a foam one at like a local range, but maybe you can, I don't know, use like paintball bullets or like something non-lethal, and still like get that live simulation environment. That was like the biggest thing I learned in doing this project, was like just how many different ways there are to like solve this problem, and like degrees of I guess like engineering that you can bring to it. And like there's just a lot of different ways to solve it, and like they all kind of yield slightly different results for like the end user. But like the biggest thing was they just kept talking to like they knew the primary end user was like military, so they're like, let's keep that front and center, and like when we're making these decisions, let's make sure that this is like the best thing for a special forces guy to train with, and then like let that drive the development, let that drive the business, and then like there will be these kind of peripheral effects, like like other guys will want to use it just for local training, or or for like for fun.
Yeah, so they obviously started a business, which is MVP Robotics. Is there anything else that they're doing outside of just the ballistic dummy, like RV?
With the RC cars and without? Because initially they probably thought, hey, this application's for tackle football only, and then you guys found another aspect to use it. So do you think they'll find another use for the RC car? And then, I mean, like Isaac said, what else do they have down the lane here if it's
Yeah,
non-confidential or whatever?
I don't know because I haven't. This was 2018 that we got the patent, so it's been a while, and I haven't really been in touch. Like, I mean, I follow them on LinkedIn or whatever, and on YouTube, but like it's sensitive stuff because it is like military contracts, so like they have to be careful. I don't know what they're working on, but I'm sure they're working on a ton. Like, I knew the guys that were doing the engineering there, and they were very smart, very diligent, and like I'm sure that they're solving interesting problems. So I'll definitely keep an eye on them. But I mean, yeah, and for right now, it's just awesome to see that like 6 months ago they got this contract. I'm sure right now it's like, all right, let's just get these things out the door. Let's figure out how to make them well and make them cheap and keep going from there, right? Like, get them into the hands of the people that need them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great business model to create, like, to sell them like the base first and then make him have to keep coming back and buying the tops for it, like every time they use it up. Like, it means that they're going to be a customer forever.
Yeah, and it's good for the end user too, right? Because like it's a cheap replaceable part. It's like you got your electric toothbrush, but you don't have to keep buying an electric toothbrush. You just throw the head away and get a new head, right?
Yeah, I actually have another question. So if, like, let's say the Department of Defense, they buy like a bunch of these, and there's a handful of them that are broken or stop working. Do you know, or do these guys do they like provide a service where they'll go and like fix them up, or like provide them like parts to fix them up?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to that. Like, I'm not part of their operations, and I never worked for them. I'm sure they have like maintenance and stuff. Yeah, like the core like drivetrain or whatever you want to call it, I think is like pretty serviceable. So like, the thing in the box, you can get in there and you can see where it broke. So it's like, when we did like the whole testing process was like just a lot of like taking out an oscilloscope and like reading voltage drops across 2 points on this box. So it's like, oh shoot, last night it was working. Today we plugged it in and it's not working. What went wrong? Because it was sitting in this lab last night and maybe some other student moved it across the room and now it doesn't work. So it's like, all right, we got to get back out these probes, figure out which wire came undone. And so, yeah, it's cool. Like, it was fun just like learning that whole process, how to do it.
Yeah, that is a good question, because at the end of the day, it is a business. They gotta stay in business, not just with innovation, but with the stuff they make too. So it'll be cool to see, like I said, how far they take that and whatever else they come up with. I don't know if they're specializing specifically in kind of military DoD stuff after this, or they're a wide range. And I don't know, you probably can't speak to that because you don't work for them, but it'll be cool to kind of keep tabs on them and see what's up.
Yeah. And like I said, it was a great time. Great group of people. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what else they do.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah. So actually I guess I wanted to go back to Nick. We've been talking a lot about robots. Let's talk about real people again. So I guess we were kind of asking earlier, like, do you have any like highlights from your time in the Marines? I guess one thing I'm curious on was, like, if you don't mind me like sharing, I know you were in Afghanistan. How long were you in Afghanistan for?
So I popped in and out. I was in Afghanistan for a little over a month. And I was at the old Camp Leatherneck, which they were retrograding. So they were kind of condensing it. And then I went off to another post, which is maybe half the size of a football field or something like that. In Afghanistan, the landscapes were beautiful. It was great there. But all bases over there are pretty much the same. You got your chow hall, you got your gym, you got your tents, and that's about it. But Afghanistan was cool. That's where like the video, the HIMARS and the intro, that's where those are from. We dropped mortars pretty frequently around the base just because it's kind of surrounded by the ANA, the Afghan National Army, which are on our side. We were training them, but at the end of the day, they go to whoever pays them the most. And, the Taliban does have money. So there were some, like, before I got there was a garage, kind of like a workshop, a big warehouse right behind the base that they were storing a bunch of IEDs and stuff like that on. There's like minor things going on, like I said, with the mortars and stuff like that, but nothing like existential that kind of rocks my world or anything like that happen. There's more of a routine basis. Like I said, I go out, fix weapons. Surprisingly, it doesn't take that long to fix a bunch of weapons, or at least PM them. So I do that in a day, and then kind of work out and help the guys out any way I can, because they're stuck out there. They're stuck on that little half a football field post for 9 months, and they don't see anything else. So whatever I can do to kind of help them out, whether that's just take a post for them for 10 hours or whatever it may be, it's just helping each other out. And that's the whole mentality of, it's not for me, it's for the guy next to me, to make sure he can go home and see his family or whatever it may be. It's never really about specifically like, oh yeah, that's, and don't get me wrong, some people probably is that they're like, oh yeah, we're here to kill Taliban and do this, and sure, that's great, but a lot of NATO rules have come into effect where, all right, now we can't shoot until we get shot at. So you're kind of behind the 8 ball on that one, but we definitely don't go seeking it, I don't think, which I stand for. I don't want to seek out war if there's no war to be had. It's interesting the way that the Marine Corps kind of changed my view. I was just kind of like a go-getter and like, oh yeah, let's go to the Middle East and do that. And then you kind of see it and you're like, well, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. There's a lot of nice people over here. It's not kind of what the news brainwashes you to think, especially tailored networks. There's no mediator nowadays. It's either CNN on the left or it's Fox News on the right. And it's hard to find a bipartisan in that. I don't really watch news anymore. I'll do my own research and kind of figure things out, but I guess that's another topic we can dive into.
Yeah, I guess, don't mean to interrupt, but like, and again, don't want to get like too political with the whole thing, because at the end of the day, it's about like, your service and, that we're all very grateful for. But is there like a partisanness to like the Marines? Like, are people like left or right, or is it kind of just totally separate?
I think in a lot of people's minds it is separate. Like, it's its own thing. The commander-in-chief, yeah, they can kind of dictate like, oh, hey, you're going to go here, you're going to go here. But you keep in mind, they don't dictate everything. That's got to pass through the Senate. That's got to pass through Congress. There's a lot of checks and balances, which is a good thing. So when people say, oh, and again, this is the last thing I'll say about politics. They're like, oh, the president, I'm not going to do this because the president I'm not going to join because Trump is the president, or I'm not going to join because Biden's the president. They don't really have any dictation on what you do. That's your first line of command has that dictation. They got to run it up, and then this goes through all these checks and balances, and it runs back down. So if you're going to do it for that reason, that's not a good idea. Do your own research. Yeah, that's all. Speak on politics here.
Yeah. So I guess the time, the month that you were in Afghanistan, was it, you mentioned like you're basically on this half a football field. Was it like hot enough that like if you're going to, or if people were going to leave that half a football field, it was like a proper, like, this is the exact mission, this is how we're going to do it? Or like, what was it like coming in and out of the base?
Yes. So they were very coordinated as far as like going from base to base. Now missions like Afghanistan, I didn't do any missions. I didn't see anybody do any missions. Just kind of we're here to keep the peace until they pulled out. But it was very coordinated. You had check-in points before you leave and before you go, and it was like a 15-minute flight. So they would be like 2 or 3 helicopters or Chinooks. It's one Chinook, which is the transporter. They'd have 1 or 2 Black Hawks, which have gunners on each side, which kind of circle the air while you land, and then while they take off to make sure there's no harm in the area, which usually there wasn't. But it is the movements are very coordinated, very well planned out. In a lot of the places that I have to give a sit rep every week, which is just a report or a salute report, which is like, well, sit reps, just a situational report. So, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And you got to run that up every week. That goes all the way up to command, all the way back down. All right, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. That's good. You're not supposed to be doing that. Let's pivot and kind of figure things out. So that was like a weekly basis to make sure you're hitting your marks. But yeah, they're very, I don't want to say like programmed into steps. You're not doing this without doing this. You're not doing that without doing this. It's very cohesive in that way.
Yeah, when you said obviously you traveled around quite a bit. Did you like have to like, you stayed in the Middle East though, so like would you like travel from one country to the next? You wouldn't like come back to the US and then travel back and then go to the US and then travel back?
No, yeah. So everything was out of Kuwait. I'd go to Kuwait and then we'd stop in Iraq and then we'd go to Syria and then we'd stop in Iraq on the way back and then we'd go back to Kuwait. So Kuwait was always like the go back to, if you go in Afghanistan, you got to fly around Iran. You go to Afghanistan a month later, you come back to Kuwait. You'd kind of resituate, figure out what you got to do next. And then Bahrain was awesome. That was like a little vacation. They had a movie theater on base and stuff like that. They had a Chili's on base. It was pretty cool.
And this was like, was it 2019 was when you were?
Yeah, March until October of 2019. Yeah, and I went with a great group of guys, big fitness guys, so that's what kind of got me into the fitness aspect out there. Like I said, there's nothing else to do, but it's getting that mentality of, all right, yeah, let's go work out for 4 hours today because there's nothing else to do. Sometimes it's a struggle, but bouncing around out there was a big help, changed the pace, and it was really cool. The whole experience was great.
Yeah. So I guess, we've talked about a few of these kind of like, I guess, Marine like role models. Like we talk about like Nick, I don't know if they're all Marines. We talk about like Nick Bare, David Goggins. Is that like a part of the culture in the Marines? Like, are these, I guess, these kind of like military role models part of it, or is that more of just like a social media thing?
I think it is and it isn't. So there's some, like Nick Bare, I don't think he was ever in the military. David Goggins obviously was a SEAL. Jocko Willink, he was a SEAL. But I don't think those are necessarily the role models that the guys in the forces have. It's more like a John Basilone or a Kyle Carpenter, the guys that kind of sacrificed a lot. Those like our Medal of Honor guys. Kyle Carpenter, he jumped on a grenade with his helmet, and this guy got tore up from head to toe. He's great. He's doing wonderful things in life. The surgeries that he got are amazing. But I think those are more the role models that guys look up to rather than these, I don't want to call them fitness influencers because they're doing a lot more than that. They're doing great stuff. But I think that is more role models for the civilian aspect of it. Or, I don't know, you see like these guys, they're in the military. They're absolutely ripped. They can run 20 miles. It's hard not to look up to these guys. And they're, at least in the fitness aspect, the goals. But these guys also have great mentalities with their families, with people around them. I haven't heard one negative thing about, this guy being a bad guy or this guy being rude to you. They all seem pretty good in that aspect, which maybe that's a military trait. I don't know. But you do get some bad apples everywhere you go. So I'm glad that those guys stood out above the rest.
I'm curious and like, because I've just heard like with training, like they'll put you through stuff where they'll like mace you or they'll like put you like in a gas sort of chamber kind of thing, or like they'll put you in like, they'll like make you do all these things. I don't know if they like tase you or whatever they do to make you have to like go through that, like that sort of that like more like brutal stuff that I hear about.
Yeah, so like the tasing and the pepper spray is more job specific. If you're like military police, or if you do any training with that, then that's job specific. But I'm glad you mentioned the gas chamber because that is a requirement, and then that's a requirement every 2 years while you're in. So you go in, and it sucks at first, but it's really not that bad. Like people would make competitions out of it for how long you can stay in there and stuff like that. But you go in there and it burns. Like it burns your throat, it burns your stomach. There's snot coming out, you're throwing up, but you take your gas mask off and you have to breathe. They force you to breathe it in, and then they make you do exercises while you're in there. So you're doing jumping jacks, push-ups to make you breathe it in. Like you have no option but to suck air.
What kind of gas is it?
Oh man, it's just tear gas. There's these little tablets they'd burn in the room. But like I said, it got to the point where you're with your buddies and it's an experience you're not really going to have. So people would make a game and have fun with it. And I don't think that stuff's necessarily going to be used on U.S. troops, at least while we're out there. But it's fun. Like the pepper spray and stuff, that'd be cool. I don't know if I'd ever want to get pepper sprayed. Tased, I wouldn't mind. But yeah, that was fun. Other brutal trainings, I mean, there wasn't a ton. They have like a MCMAP program. It's kind of a joke, to be honest. It's Marine Corps martial arts. And people like to think of it like jujitsu or something like that, but it's not. It's kind of the Marine Corps' way of hand-to-hand combat, and it's not great. I'll be honest. Sorry, Marine Corps, but it's not great. But it's the same system as jiu-jitsu. You have different belts, and it's kind of like a pride thing to where you wear that belt on your uniform. So gray, brown, or tan, gray, brown, something in black, and then you can get tabs. You can get a red tab if you're an instructor or something like that. So it's more of like a pride thing and showing off, like, hey, I'm a black belt in this. But the brutal aspect of that is you have to go through the course in order to get your belt or your tab, and it's pretty much just a hazing course. Or, I went through a machine gunner's course, which I got thrown on like my first couple of weeks in the fleet. So after I went to my MOS, my job training, you go to the fleet, which is just the normal Marine Corps. And I was the lowest guy on the totem pole, and they needed a guy for training. So like, all right, you're going to go to machine gun training. And I was like, all right, I already know machine guns. This will be easy. But it's not really machine gun training. It's carrying machine guns up hills for no reason, and doing a lot of stupid stuff for no reason, carrying a litter, which is just like something medical people lay the body on to carry them. Very outdated. Nobody uses them anymore. But you're carrying like a 150-pound dummy on a litter up a hill for no reason. It's just a formal way to haze people. But I got a lot out of the training. I did learn some stuff, and I got more in shape. It builds your mindset a little bit. So afterwards, it's fun to look back and say that you did those kind of things. But in the moment, it sucked. I wanted out of it so bad, trying to think of ways that I could get out of it. There's no way to get out of it. Yeah. But it was, I mean, like I said, in the moment, it was brutal. But I look back on it, and it's some of the best times I ever had. So it's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like getting belts, with this martial arts training. I know like a big thing in the Marines and like most branches is like medals. Do you have like any like favorite medals or accolades or like things you remember fondly?
No, I mean, you got like a couple of letters of appreciation, which are nothing. And then I think, cause I got out as an E4 corporal. I finished with like 8 ribbons or something like that. Like probably just my NAM, my Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal I got at the end, which is kind of like, I was good at my job and everything like that. So they put all my accolades into one thing, gave me an award for it. But it sucks because you have guys that specifically ribbon chase to build up their looks more than actually doing the stuff that a Marine should be doing, So, for example, like if you're in country, I was in Afghanistan for more than a month, so I get a ribbon for Afghanistan campaign. You'll have people of higher rank that just tag along on a trip and sit there for a month just to get that ribbon because they don't have it, instead of actually doing something productive. Whether that's staying in Kuwait, working, helping the guys out, they'll just kind of chill out for a month at base because they want another ribbon on their stack. So it's unfortunate that you have people like that that don't really want to contribute to the core mission of the Marine Corps or whatever branch it may be. And the ribbons are cool. They look great on your uniform, but that's at the end, that's not really what it's about. And I think you can kind of learn that from the older guys that have these big stacks, but they don't talk about it. I mean, you can, like, after being in, I can look at somebody's ribbon stack on their chest and be like, all right, that guy he was a bad dude. Like he did some stuff, and you can kind of be like, all right, that guy was a paper pusher. He didn't do much in his career. You can pin out which guy is which, but it just sucks that there's kind of leeches like that.
Yeah, it's like any big organization, right? Well, one other thing I know we wanted to touch on, like Memorial Day is obviously right around the corner, and a big thing in the CrossFit world is the Murph on Memorial Day. Was that part of Marine culture, the Murph?
A little bit. Like we did a Murph on Memorial Day, our workout. And then you do like, before you do all the exercises, he'll have a class and you'll talk about Mike Murphy and the whole mission that those guys went on. But It wasn't like ingrained. It was just something you do in memory of those guys, which I think is great that everybody does it. I'll be doing one this year, so hopefully you guys do one too. But it's great to kind of see the stuff around like Grafton has that 2.5 mile walk for Memorial Day. It's good to see people just getting out and being active for it. Maybe you can't do a Murph, no problem with that. Do a hybrid Murph. Instead of 100 pull-ups, if you can't do 100 pull-ups, do 100 push-ups and then do 200 squats and then 300 sit-ups if that's what you can manage. But do some variation of it. It's great for memory. It's great for camaraderie if you do it with a group of buddies. It's not a time trial by any means. It's just kind of a memory thing.
Do you try to like get like really good times when you do it? Like, what's your like best time?
I don't know if I've ever actually like recorded a time. I just kind of hammer it out. Maybe very early on I did times when everybody was doing it. What's the fastest ones by that CrossFit guy? What's his name? It's 5 or 6 years ago. They had it as a part of the CrossFit Games. It was a really cool event.
Is it like Rich Froning? Is that his name? That was a big
The last
CrossFit
name
guy.
sounds right, but I don't know if it's the first name. But I think you got a good idea of who I'm talking about. Those guys did it, and I think he did it in like less than 30 minutes. It was absolutely insane. I mean, those guys are very fit. I'm not a CrossFit guy, but those guys can do some special stuff.
Yeah, I think the first time I did it, my goal was just to get it in under an hour. So I did it in, I think I actually did it in under 50 minutes. Did it in like 48 minutes. And then when I did it last year, I was way slower. I did it in like 58 minutes. But part of that was just coming back from a knee injury. So I wasn't really running or doing any of that leading up to it.
Yeah. And it's good to set these goals. I'll time myself this year, and I'll let you guys know what I get. I got to work on the cardio aspect of it. But it's always just fun to do. Like you said, it's a good memory of the guys. It's good to remember why you're doing it and what you're doing it for. It's not just any workout, but it's a great way to stay in shape. And
yeah, it's brutal. It's not easy. The first few times, I mean, basically every time I've done it, it's like by the end I'm just single repping pull-ups, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah, for me, I don't even think, like, for me, the first run is pretty easy. Like, that first mile is pretty easy. I never struggled all that much with the pull-ups, the push-ups, and the squats, but that second run, after you get done with the squats, it's horrible, because it's like it's like kind of like what we were saying before with Ironman training. It's like you get off the bike and you do that run, you get done with those squats and you start running, and it's just like your legs just like don't want to work. They just like don't cooperate with you.
yeah, and it's all how you break it out. Maybe you do the squats first, so you give your legs a break before the next run. I like to do it in the 5, 10, 20, so that you kind of finish at the same time. 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 20 squats, and I think that equals out to getting the same amount of reps, so that you finish all the workouts at the same time. But like you said, Matt, at the end of the pull-ups, I mean, I'm doing maybe 2 reps at most, trying to bust through it. Push-ups aren't too bad, and the squats, like you said, your quads are killing, especially when you have to run another 1.5 miles.
Yeah, I mean, the push-ups are probably the easiest for me. I've just been good with like push-ups, and the pull-ups are probably the hardest, I would say, out of the 3 exercises.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's just like pain, right? Which is kind of the point. Like, remember the sacrifice that those guys made, and that people are making these days too. Just push yourself beyond what you think you can do, and appreciate what the military represents and stands for. What guys like Nick are doing for all of us. So
I enjoy doing it. So thank you guys for your support as well.
Yeah, I think we can wrap it up there. This has been the Rest Period Podcast, episode 2. Thank you guys for watching, and yeah, tune in for episode 3.
Yeah, tune in for the next one.
see you guys soon.
You're coming with me, feel it or not. You're gonna fear it like I showed you. The spirit of God lives in us. You hear it a lot, lyrics the shock. Is it a miracle or am I just product of pop? Listen up, but sizzle my whistle. This is the plot. Listen up, you piss
my leg give out. Can't shut my mouth till the smoke clears out. Am I high? I'ma rip this till my bone. Till the